I'm Juliana, 35 years old, a successful real estate agent in Denver, with what I thought was a perfect 8-year marriage to Ryan. We built our beautiful suburban home together, worked hard for everything we had. But lately, his late nights at the office were becoming more frequent, and something felt off. I never imagined that scrolling through social media one morning would completely shatter the life I thought we had built together. If you're watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories like mine. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I discovered my husband's betrayal with our neighbor right under my own roof. I grew up in a working-class family in Colorado Springs, the daughter of a teacher and a mechanic. From an early age, I learned the value of hard work and determination. My parents sacrificed everything to put me through college, and I promised myself I would make something of my life to honor their efforts. After graduation, I threw myself into building a career in real estate, determined to succeed in a competitive market. By the time I was 25, I had established myself as a promising agent with a knack for matching people with their dream homes. I loved helping others find the perfect place to build their lives, though my own personal life took a back seat to my career ambitions. Dating wasn't a priority. I had watched too many of my friends settle for mediocre relationships just to avoid being alone. I wanted something real or nothing at all. Then came the charity auction for a local children's hospital, where my agency had donated a package. I was there representing our firm, mingling with potential clients when Ryan approached me. Tall, with dark hair and the most genuine smile I'd ever seen, he introduced himself as a corporate attorney who had just made partner at his firm. There was an immediate chemistry between us, the kind you read about in books but rarely experience in real life. "You're the only person in this room who doesn't look bored out of their mind," he said, handing me a glass of champagne. "Maybe I'm just better at hiding it," I replied, making him laugh. We talked for hours that night, missing most of the auction. Ryan wasn't like the other men I'd dated. There was no pretense, no games. He was direct, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and ambitions. By the end of the evening, I knew this was different. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Despite our busy schedules, we made time for each other. Weekend trips to the mountains, surprise lunch dates, long conversations about our dreams and fears. Ryan supported my career ambitions without feeling threatened by them. He championed my successes and comforted me through disappointments. After 2 years of dating, he proposed during a sunset hike in the Rockies, presenting a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "I want to build a life with you, Juliana," he said as he knelt before me. "A partnership where we both can grow and thrive." The wedding was everything I had dreamed of. Not too large, just close friends and family celebrating our love in a rustic mountain venue. We honeymooned in Greece, spending lazy days exploring ancient ruins and evenings watching the sunset over the Mediterranean. Life felt perfect, like everything had fallen into place exactly as it should. For the first few years of our marriage, we lived in a comfortable condo downtown, saving for our dream home. We both worked long hours building our careers and our savings account. There were challenges, of course: disagreements about finances, frustrations when work interfered with our plans, learning to compromise. But we navigated them together, always coming back to the foundation of respect and love we'd established. 3 years ago, after hours of searching and dozens of viewings, we found it. A beautiful colonial-style home in one of Denver's most desirable neighborhoods. The moment we walked through the front door, I knew this was where we were meant to be. 4 bedrooms for the family we planned to start soon, a spacious kitchen for entertaining, a backyard perfect for summer barbecues. The price was steep, but with both our incomes, we could make it work. "This is it, Jules," Ryan said, squeezing my hand as we stood in what would become our living room. "This is our forever home." The neighborhood exceeded our expectations. Tree-lined streets, excellent schools, and neighbors who quickly became friends. Block parties in the summer, holiday celebrations in the winter. We felt like we'd found our community, the place where we belonged. That's when Amanda moved in next door about a year after we'd settled into our home. Recently divorced and starting over, she explained at the first neighborhood gathering she attended. She was striking. tall and blonde with an easy confidence that drew people to her. I immediately liked her directness and dry sense of humor. The divorce was amicable, she told me over glasses of wine at our kitchen island after I'd invited her over to welcome her to the neighborhood. We just wanted different things. He wanted me to be a corporate wife who focused on charity lunches, and I wanted a career of my own. As a successful marketing executive who had moved to Denver for a fresh start, Amanda and I bonded over being career-focused women in a world that still sometimes questioned our choices. She joined my book club, and we discovered a shared love of gardening. She offered me tips on growing the perfect tomatoes, and I helped her navigate the local social scene. Ryan was friendly with Amanda too, in the casual way of neighbors. They chatted at community events, exchanged pleasantries when running into each other collecting the mail. Nothing that raised any red flags, just normal neighborly interactions. Our life seemed picture perfect. My real estate business was thriving with referrals coming in from satisfied clients. Ryan was on track for a senior partnership at his law firm. We traveled when we could entertain friends in our beautiful home and continued to build what I thought was an unshakable foundation for our future. But looking back now, I can see the small cracks forming even then. Ryan's work hours gradually increased. The firm was handling a major corporate merger, he explained, requiring all hands on deck. Date nights were postponed, then forgotten altogether. When he was home, he seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone. The intimacy that had always been a cornerstone of our relationship began to wane. I told myself this was normal, just a phase all marriages go through. The honeymoon period doesn't last forever. We were both building careers, and sometimes that required sacrifices. Once the merger was complete, things would go back to normal. At least that's what I wanted to believe. About 6 months ago, I began noticing subtle changes in Ryan. Nothing dramatic at first, just small shifts that in isolation might mean nothing, but together formed a pattern I couldn't quite ignore. It started with a new cologne. Ryan had worn the same scent since I met him, a clean, woody fragrance I'd given him for his birthday early in our relationship. One morning, as he leaned in to kiss me goodbye, I caught a whiff of something different, spicier, more expensive. "New cologne?" I asked casually. "Just trying something different," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "The guy at the department store recommended it." Around the same time, Ryan suddenly became interested in fitness again. He'd always been in decent shape, but his busy schedule had meant gym visits had become sporadic at best. Now he was leaving early 3 mornings a week for sessions with a personal trainer. His body was changing, becoming more defined. On its own, this was a positive change, but combined with the other shifts in his behavior, it raised questions. Then there were the text messages. Ryan had always been attached to his phone, a necessity in his profession. But now he guarded it zealously. It was always face down, and he took it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. Several times I noticed him quickly locking the screen when I entered the room. "Work never stops," he'd say with a strained smile when I asked who was texting so late at night. The late nights at the office became more frequent. The corporate merger that had been all-consuming for months had finally completed, but Ryan's hours didn't improve. In fact, they got worse. Dinner plans were canceled at the last minute due to client emergencies. Weekends were interrupted by urgent calls that required him to go into the office. One particularly lonely Friday evening, after Ryan texted that he'd be working late again, I decided to surprise him with dinner from his favorite Italian restaurant. I drove downtown, picked up the food, and headed to his office building. The security guard knew me and waved me through without question. But when I reached Ryan's floor, the office was dark. Only a few junior associates were still at their desks, none of whom had seen Ryan in hours. "I think he mentioned a client meeting off-site," one young lawyer offered, looking uncomfortable. I drove home, the food growing cold beside me, a knot forming in my stomach. When Ryan finally came home around midnight, I asked where he'd been. "At the office, like I told you," he said, irritation edging his voice. We moved to the conference room on the 10th floor to spread out the documents. It was plausible. But something in his tone, the way his eyes slid away from mine, planted the first real seed of doubt. Phone calls became another red flag. Ryan would step outside onto the patio to take certain calls, his voice too low for me to hear. If I happened to walk outside, he'd quickly end the conversation or switch to discussing obvious work matters. "Just a sensitive case," he'd explain. "Confidentiality is crucial." Meanwhile, Amanda had become an increasingly present figure in our lives. She dropped by regularly, often with small gifts or food she'd made. "I always cook too much for just one person," she'd say, handing over a casserole or freshly baked cookies. She offered to collect our mail when we went away for a weekend. She seemed to know Ryan's schedule, mentioning his late meetings in ways that suggested they'd been discussing his work. "I saw your lights on when I got home at midnight," she told me once. Ryan must be working so hard on that big case he mentioned. But had he mentioned a big case to her? When had they had that conversation? Confused and increasingly anxious, I confided in my younger sister Lauren during our monthly lunch date. "I don't know if I'm being paranoid," I told her, stirring my untouched soup. "But something feels off with Ryan. The late nights, the secrecy with his phone, the way he gets defensive when I ask simple questions." Lauren, always the practical one, shrugged it off. "Jules, he's a corporate attorney on the partner track. Of course he's working crazy hours. And everyone's protective of their phones these days. It doesn't mean he's hiding anything." "But what about the night his office was dark when he said he was working there? Conference room on another floor, like he said. Or maybe he stepped out for coffee. You're creating problems where there aren't any." Was I? Ryan certainly made me feel that way whenever I voiced concerns. He had an explanation for everything, and they were all reasonable on the surface. The earring I found in his car belonged to a client he'd given a ride to after a meeting when her Uber canceled. The dinner charges at restaurants on nights he was supposedly working late were client meetings he'd forgotten to mention. The new passwords on his laptop and phone were security measures the firm had implemented after a data breach. Every time I brought up my concerns, Ryan made me feel irrational, paranoid, even controlling. "Don't you trust me?" he'd ask, his voice filled with hurt. "After everything we've built together." And I did want to trust him. I wanted to believe that my fears were unfounded, that our marriage was as solid as I'd always thought. So I pushed down my instincts. I ignored the warning signs. I convinced myself that the problem wasn't Ryan's behavior, it was my interpretation of it. I decided to focus on strengthening our relationship instead of questioning it. I made more effort at home, planning special dinners and date nights. I stopped asking about the late nights and mysterious texts. I told myself that this was just a rough patch, that all marriages have them, and that we would get through it together. Looking back now, I realize I was gaslighting myself, doing Ryan's work for him. All the signs were there, but I refused to read them correctly. I was fighting to preserve a marriage that in reality had already begun to crumble beneath my feet. As the weeks passed, the evidence continued to mount, though I still desperately tried to ignore it. The Ryan I knew, or thought I knew, wouldn't betray me. We had built too much together, had too much to lose. Yet the distance between us grew along with my collection of unexplained discrepancies and strange coincidences. In early spring, Ryan announced he needed to attend a 3-day conference in Chicago. These business trips weren't unusual, though they had become more frequent over the past year. I offered to come along, thinking we could extend it into a mini vacation after his work obligations ended. "That wouldn't work this time," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "The schedule is packed and I'll probably be networking in the evenings. You'd be bored sitting in the hotel room." I accepted his explanation without argument, determined to be the supportive, understanding wife. The day after Ryan left, I ran into Amanda collecting her mail. "You must be enjoying some alone time," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm heading out of town myself tomorrow. A little personal vacation I've been looking forward to." "Anywhere nice?" I asked, making polite conversation while trying to ignore the uneasy feeling her announcement triggered. "Chicago," she replied, watching my face carefully. "I have a friend there I haven't seen in ages." The coincidence was too perfect, but I pushed the thought away. Chicago is a major city. Thousands of people travel there every day. It meant nothing. I convinced myself of this, even as I noticed Amanda's expensive new luggage and the careful way she'd styled her hair so unlike her usual casual appearance. A week after they both returned from their supposedly separate trips, I was cleaning Ryan's car before a client showing when I found it. A small pearl earring wedged between the passenger seat and center console. Not my style at all, and definitely not mine. When confronted, Ryan had an immediate explanation. One of the junior associates needed a ride to court yesterday. It must be hers. I'll return it to the office tomorrow. I nodded and handed him the earring, noting how quickly he had an answer, how he didn't even need to think about whose it might be. Later I realized I'd never heard him mention giving anyone a ride to court. And why would a professional woman wear pearl earrings to court, but not notice when one fell out? Then came the credit card statements. Ryan and I maintained separate credit cards for personal expenses while sharing accounts for household costs. Usually I paid little attention to his statement when it arrived respecting his financial independence. But when April's bill arrived while he was in the shower, curiosity got the better of me. There were charges from restaurants on evenings he told me he was working late at the office. A florist charge the day before his Chicago trip. A significant purchase at a high-end jewelry store I knew nothing about. When I casually mentioned the restaurant charges, Ryan didn't miss a beat. Client dinners, he said. The firm is trying to land a new corporate account, so we've been wining and dining their executives. And you didn't think to mention these dinners when I asked about your day? His face darkened. I didn't realize I needed to account for every minute to you. These meetings were boring and technical, hardly worth discussing. Ryan's irritability had become another red flag. The man who had once been patient and kind increasingly snapped at me over minor issues. A misplaced remote control, a question about his schedule, a suggestion for weekend plans. He criticized things he'd once loved about me, my enthusiasm for my work, my close relationship with my sister, even the way I laughed. "Do you have to be so loud?" he asked one night when I was on the phone with Lauren. "I can hear you from the other side of the house." Meanwhile, Amanda's behavior toward me shifted subtly. The warm friendliness cooled to something more reserved, almost pitying. She still brought over occasional meals or garden cuttings, but our conversations became brief and superficial. She no longer joined book club meetings claiming work commitments. One afternoon, I overheard two neighbors talking in hushed tones at a community garden event. "Always at her house when Juliana's at work," one murmured. "My home office faces their street, and I see his car there at least twice a week." They fell silent when they noticed me approaching. Their guilty expressions told me exactly who they were discussing. Still I smiled, and joined their conversation, as if I hadn't heard, as if my heart wasn't racing with fresh suspicion. That night I tried once more to reconnect with Ryan, preparing his favorite meal, and opening a bottle of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. "What's all this for?" he asked, looking uncomfortable rather than pleased. "No reason. I just missed you. We haven't had a proper dinner together in weeks." He made an effort that evening, asking about my day and sharing amusing stories about colleagues. For a few hours, it felt like we were us again. But when his phone buzzed with a text during dessert, the spell broke. He glanced at it, his expression changing subtly. "Work?" I asked. "Yes, just a quick question about tomorrow's deposition." He tucked the phone away, but the moment was lost. The distance returned wider than before. In a last-ditch effort to salvage our connection, I suggested a weekend getaway to a mountain resort we'd visited during our first year of marriage. To my surprise, Ryan agreed, even taking the initiative to make reservations. For the first time in months, hope flickered that whatever was wrong could be fixed. The weekend started promisingly. We hiked, enjoyed massages at the resort spa, and had a romantic dinner. But Ryan remained distant, checking his phone frequently, and stepping away for calls he claimed were work-related. During our last night, as we sat on our private balcony watching the sunset, I finally gathered the courage to ask directly, "Ryan, is there something you're not telling me? Something wrong between us that we need to address?" He stiffened, then forced a smile. "Everything's fine, Jules. Work is stressful right now, that's all. Don't create problems that don't exist." There it was again. The implication that my concerns were imaginary, that I was the problem. I let it drop, unwilling to ruin what remained of our weekend. But as I watched him sleeping that night, his face relaxed, and younger looking in repose, I wondered if I even knew the man beside me anymore. Back home, I threw myself into work scheduling showings and open houses that kept me busy from dawn until dusk. At night, I attended therapy sessions. I didn't tell Ryan about discussing my marriage in vague terms, but never voicing my true suspicions. The therapist encouraged communication and suggested couples counseling advice that felt hollow, given what I feared was happening. On our 8th wedding anniversary, Ryan sent a massive flower arrangement to my office. Roses in the same blush pink as my bridal bouquet. The card read, 8 years of building a beautiful life together. All my love, R. The gesture touched me deeply, reigniting hope that perhaps I was wrong about everything. That evening, we had reservations at the upscale restaurant where we'd celebrated our engagement. Ryan arrived late, apologizing profusely and blaming a client emergency. Throughout dinner, his attention kept drifting to his phone, which buzzed repeatedly with text notifications. "I'm sorry, Jules," he said, checking it yet again. "The Wilson merger is at a critical stage. I need to stay on top of developments." But when he excused himself to take a call and I glimpsed the screen as he walked away, the name displayed wasn't a colleague's or client's. It was Amanda's, accompanied by a heart emoji next to her name in his contacts. That night, as Ryan slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, torn between confronting him and continuing to pretend everything was normal. I chose the latter, still desperately clinging to the belief that there must be an explanation, that the life we'd built couldn't be based on lies. In retrospect, I realize I was willfully blind, constructing elaborate justifications for behavior that had only one logical explanation. I wasn't preserving my marriage. I was prolonging my own heartbreak. The truth was there all along, waiting for me to finally acknowledge it. Sunday mornings had always been my favorite part of the week. Ryan and I used to linger in bed talking about everything and nothing, planning our day, our future. As our marriage deteriorated, this ritual had disappeared, with Ryan often leaving early for breakfast meetings or tennis with colleagues. This particular Sunday, I woke alone again, the house quiet and empty. After making coffee, I settled onto our living room sofa with my phone mindlessly scrolling through social media as I tried to ignore the hollowness in my chest. That's when I saw it, a post from Amanda that had been uploaded just 30 minutes earlier. The photo showed a rumpled bed with white sheets, morning sunlight streaming through partially opened curtains. Amanda wasn't in the frame, but the intimate nature of the image was clear. It was captioned, "Waking up in paradise. Sunday mornings are the best when you're with someone special. Blessed, had new beginnings." At first, I barely registered what I was seeing. Just another social media humblebrag from a neighbor. But something about the image tugged at my attention, demanding a closer look. The curtains in the background, I knew those curtains. The distinctive pattern of blue and silver swirls, the unique trim I had agonized over selecting. Those weren't just any curtains. They were the custom drapes I had specially ordered for our master bedroom when we moved in. The realization hit me with physical force, like a punch to the stomach that left me gasping for air. I zoomed in on the photo, desperately searching for some detail that would prove me wrong. But the more I looked, the more confirmations I found. The edge of the nightstand visible in the corner, the one Ryan had inherited from his grandfather. A glimpse of the unique lamp base we'd purchased on our trip to Santa Fe. And there, partially visible on the nightstand, was Ryan's distinctive watch, the one I'd given him for his 35th birthday. This wasn't some random bedroom that happened to have similar curtains. This was my bedroom, my bed. Amanda was in my house, in my bed with my husband. The room seemed to spin around me as the implications sank in. I checked our home security system app on my phone, which logged entry and exit times. Ryan had come home at 2 a.m. according to the log, presumably after a late work event. He'd left again at 7 a.m. for what he'd claimed was an early golf game with clients. But he hadn't gone golfing. He'd waited until I fell asleep, then invited Amanda over. Into our home. Into our bed. My hands shaking, I took screenshots of Amanda's post, saving the evidence before she could delete it. Then, operating on instinct rather than any clear plan, I went upstairs to our bedroom. The bed had been hastily made, unusual for Ryan, who typically left it untouched when he got up before me. The sheets were different from the ones I'd put on 2 days ago, another detail that had escaped my notice that morning in my groggy state. In the bathroom, I found 2 used glasses by the sink instead of one. A long blonde hair caught in the shower drain that was definitely not mine. The subtle scent of an unfamiliar perfume hanging in the air. All these little betrayals in the space I had considered most intimate and sacred. My body reacted before my mind could fully process what was happening. My stomach heaved and I barely made it to the toilet before vomiting the coffee I'd just consumed. Crumpled on the bathroom floor afterward, cold tile against my face, I felt a panic attack building. Chest tightening, breath shortening, vision tunneling. I hadn't experienced one in years, not since the stressful early days of my real estate career. Somehow I dragged myself back to bed, our bed the scene of the betrayal, and curled into a ball trying to regulate my breathing as tears streamed down my face. Minutes or hours passed, I couldn't tell, as I cycled through disbelief, devastation, and finally rage. How dare they? How dare they violate my home, my sanctuary? How dare Ryan bring her into our bed, the place where we had shared our most intimate moments, our hopes and dreams and vulnerabilities? When I could finally move again, I returned to my phone and stared at Amanda's post, which had already garnered several likes and supportive comments from people who had no idea what they were actually endorsing. My finger hovered over the comment button as I debated my next move. I could confront Ryan privately when he returned. I could call Amanda and demand an explanation. I could continue pretending I didn't know, gathering more evidence before making any accusations. But something had broken inside me, the part that cared about appearances, about doing things the right way, about protecting Ryan's reputation or sparing his feelings. Why should I be discreet about their betrayal when they had been so flagrant, so careless, so disrespectful? With surprisingly steady fingers, I typed a comment. Nice view. Say hi to my husband. 6 words. Simple, direct, undeniable. I hit post before I could second-guess myself. The response was immediate. My phone began buzzing with notifications. Mutual friends expressing shock, neighbors sending private messages asking if I was okay, even a few brave souls tagging Ryan directly with question marks. Within minutes, Amanda deleted the post entirely, but screenshots were already circulating. The secret was out, exposed in the harsh light of public scrutiny. Ryan called within seconds of my comment appearing. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again, leaving increasingly frantic messages. Jules, this isn't what it looks like. Please call me back. Juliana, we need to talk. Pick up the phone. For God's sake, Jules, answer your phone. You're making a scene over nothing. Nothing. He was calling his affair, in our bed in our home, nothing. I turned off my phone and waited, knowing he would come home soon. Sure enough, within 20 minutes, I heard his car screeching into the driveway, the slam of the car door, his key in the lock. Juliana, he shouted from downstairs. Juliana, where are you? I didn't answer, forcing him to search the house until he found me sitting calmly at our bedroom vanity, staring at my reflection. Our eyes met in the mirror, and for a moment, I didn't recognize either of us. Jules, Ryan said, his voice softer now that he'd found me. This is all a misunderstanding. Let me explain. I turned slowly from the vanity, taking in his disheveled appearance, hair uncombed, golf shirt hastily tucked in, face flushed with exertion or guilt or both. A misunderstanding, I repeated, my voice surprisingly steady. Please explain how my neighbor ended up in our bed, taking romantic morning photos with your watch visible on the nightstand. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing, but now read as calculated buying time to craft a lie. Amanda and I ran into each other at breakfast. She'd locked herself out of her house, so I told her she could wait here until her sister brought the spare key. She asked to lie down because she had a headache. That's all. And your watch? The different sheets. The 2 glasses in the bathroom. The shower that was clearly used by 2 people this morning. You're being paranoid, seeing things that aren't there. His tone shifted from placating to irritated. This is exactly why I've been spending so much time away from home lately. You turn everything into a drama. I laughed, the sound brittle and unfamiliar even to my own ears. You're really going to try that gaslighting me when I have photographic evidence and dozens of witnesses who've seen her post. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. Through the bedroom window, I could see Amanda standing on our porch, arms wrapped around herself as if for protection. Perfect timing, I said, standing up. Let's hear what your girlfriend has to say. I moved past Ryan, who grabbed my arm. Jules, wait. Don't do this. I shook off his grip. Don't touch me. You lost that right when you brought her into our bed. Downstairs, I opened the door to find Amanda looking both defiant and terrified. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her red-rimmed eyes or the blotchy flush of her cheeks. Juliana, I am so sorry, she began, words tumbling out. I never meant for this to happen or for you to find out this way. Please come in, I said with mock politeness. We were just discussing your social media talents. She stepped inside, hesitantly flinching when she saw Ryan descending the stairs. The three of us stood in the entryway, a grotesque triangle of betrayal and shattered trust. How long? I asked, looking between them. Neither answered immediately. Ryan stared at the floor while Amanda bit her lip. How long have you been sleeping with my husband? I demanded, my voice rising. In my house, in my bed. 6 months, Amanda finally whispered. Since the Hendersons' Halloween party. 6 months. Half a year of lies. While I was planning our anniversary celebration, worrying about our marriage, blaming myself for the distance between us they had been carrying on right under my nose. He told me you were separated. Amanda continued, tears now flowing freely. That you were staying together for appearances until after his partnership review. He said you had an understanding. I turned to Ryan, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. Is that true? Did you tell her we were separated? Not exactly, he muttered. I said things weren't good between us, that we'd been growing apart. Liar? Amanda's composure broke entirely. You said you were sleeping in separate bedrooms, that the marriage was over in all but name. You said you were going to ask for a divorce after your partnership came through next month. The neighbors who had gathered on the sidewalk, drawn by the commotion, had a front row seat to the spectacular implosion of what they'd probably thought was the perfect marriage. Part of me was mortified by the public nature of this confrontation, but a larger part was past caring about appearances. Is that true? I asked Ryan. Were you planning to divorce me? He straightened, something hardening in his expression. Yes. I've been unhappy for a long time, Jules. You're so focused on your career, on this house, on what everything looks like from the outside. When was the last time you asked what I wanted? Amanda makes me feel alive again. The words struck like physical blows, but I refused to show how deeply they cut. So your solution was to cheat rather than communicate, to humiliate me in front of our entire social circle, to violate our home. I was trying to find the right time to tell you, he said, having the audacity to sound aggrieved. I didn't want to hurt you. A laugh escaped me, harsh and humorless. How considerate. And I suppose sleeping with our neighbor in our bed was also done out of concern for my feelings. As we argued, more details emerged, each more painful than the last. The Chicago trip had indeed been shared, a romantic getaway funded partially by our joint account. The mysterious jewelry purchase was a bracelet for Amanda's birthday. They had been meeting regularly at hotels at her house when I was showing properties, and occasionally when they thought I was safely out of town in our own home. I think you both need to leave, I finally said, emotionally exhausted. Now. Jules, be reasonable, Ryan started. This is my house too. We need to discuss this rationally. Rationally? My voice rose again. You've been having an affair with our neighbor for 6 months, Ryan. You brought her into our bed. You lied to my face countless times. You made me think I was crazy for suspecting something was wrong. There's nothing rational to discuss right now. Where am I supposed to go? He demanded. I don't care. A hotel. Your girlfriend's house. Your mother's. Anywhere that isn't here. Amanda had retreated toward the door, clearly eager to escape the situation she'd helped create. "Ryan, I think we should go. Give Juliana some space." "This isn't over, Jules," Ryan said, grabbing his keys from the hallway table. "This is my house, too. My name is on the mortgage." "Then your name can be on the divorce papers, too," I replied, a calm certainty settling over me. "I want you gone by the time I get back." "Back where are you going?" "Away from you." I grabbed my purse and pushed past them both, head held high as I walked through the crowd of neighbors who quickly pretended they hadn't been watching intently. I got into my car and drove no destination in mind, just needing distance from the smoking ruins of my marriage. As I drove aimlessly through the city, my phone continually buzzed with texts and calls, from Ryan, from concerned friends, from my sister. I ignored them all, needing time to process what had happened and what would come next. By the time I checked into a hotel that evening, one thing had become crystal clear: I would not be the victim in this story. Ryan and Amanda had underestimated me, assuming I would crumble under the weight of their betrayal. They had no idea how strong I could be when pushed to my limits. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, where I would reclaim my power and rebuild my life on my own terms. The days following the confrontation passed in a blur of practical actions and emotional numbness. I checked into a luxury hotel downtown, using the credit card Ryan didn't know about, the one I kept for business emergencies. The irony wasn't lost on me. While he had been hiding an affair, I had been hiding financial independence. The difference was, my secret hadn't destroyed anyone's life. My first call, once I felt stable enough to speak without breaking down, was to a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney, but Catherine Winters, known throughout Denver as the best in the business. Her reputation for fierce advocacy and no-nonsense approach to high-conflict divorces made her expensive and worth every penny. "I need the first available appointment," I told her receptionist, my voice steady, despite the chaos inside me. "It's urgent." 2 hours later, I sat in Catherine's sleek office recounting the events of the past 6 months, culminating in the Instagram post and public confrontation. She listened without interruption, taking occasional notes, her expression giving nothing away. "Do you have copies of the photo and your financial records?" she asked when I finished. I handed over my phone with the screenshot and access to our online banking. "I've been the primary breadwinner for the past 3 years," I explained. "My real estate business took off while Ryan was still working toward partnership. Our house is in both our names, but I made the down payment with money I inherited from my grandmother." Catherine nodded, reviewing the information. "Colorado is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. That means assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally. Given the circumstances, especially the infidelity occurring in the marital home, we have good grounds to argue for a favorable settlement." Over the next week, I worked methodically with Catherine to document everything. We assembled financial records, property valuations, and evidence of Ryan's infidelity. I learned he had opened a separate bank account 6 months ago, exactly when the affair began, and had been siphoning money into it, preparing for the divorce he planned to spring on me after securing his partnership. "This works in our favor," Catherine explained. "It demonstrates premeditation and financial deception." Meanwhile, Ryan vacillated between remorse and hostility. His text messages ranged from desperate pleas for reconciliation to angry accusations that I was overreacting. "We can work through this," he wrote one morning. "Couples survive affairs all the time. We have too much history to throw everything away." Then hours later, "You're being ridiculous and vindictive. Amanda means nothing to me. It was just sex." I didn't respond to any of his messages, following Catherine's advice to limit communication to email and only regarding practical matters. This clearly frustrated him, as the tone of his texts grew increasingly agitated. Amanda, for her part, attempted damage control in the neighborhood by claiming she had been manipulated and lied to. According to friends who still kept me informed, she was telling anyone who would listen that Ryan had convinced her his marriage was over in all but paperwork. "She's playing the victim," my neighbor Susan told me during a supportive lunch. "But nobody's buying it. We all saw how friendly she was with you while sleeping with Ryan behind your back. The hypocrisy is staggering. 10 days after discovering the affair, I returned to the house while Ryan was at work to collect more of my belongings. I had arranged for a locksmith to meet me there to change the locks, a move Catherine assured me was legally defensible given the circumstances. Walking through what had once been my dream home felt surreal. Everything looked the same. The furniture we'd chosen together, the photos of happier times, the small decorative touches that had made this house ours. Yet everything had changed, tainted by betrayal and lies. In our bedroom, a space I could no longer enter without visualizing them together, I efficiently packed clothing and personal items. The custom curtains that had exposed the affair had already been taken down the rod bare above the windows. In the closet, I discovered a small velvet box hidden in Ryan's sock drawer, containing a diamond necklace I'd never seen clearly intended for Amanda. I photographed it as evidence and left it where I found it. When I had what I needed, I left a formal letter drafted by Catherine on the kitchen counter. It outlined the terms under which Ryan could access the house until our court date and made clear that any attempt to remove assets or valuables would be met with immediate legal action. As the locksmith finished his work, I stood on the front porch looking at the house that had represented all my dreams. I had thought this was my forever home, the place where we would raise children and grow old together. Now it was just a structure filled with painful memories, one I would likely sell as part of the divorce settlement. "All done, ma'am," the locksmith said, handing me the new keys. "Need anything else?" I shook my head, surprising myself with the lack of emotion I felt. The numbness was giving way to something else, not sadness or anger, but resolve. I was taking back control one step at a time. That evening, I received a furious call from Ryan after he discovered he couldn't get into the house. "You can't lock me out of my own home," he shouted when I answered. "This is illegal. Check your email," I replied calmly. "My attorney has arranged for you to collect essential items tomorrow at 2 p.m. I will not be present. A representative from her office will supervise to ensure nothing of joint ownership is removed." "You've lost your mind, Jules. This isn't you." "You're right. This isn't the me you knew. That woman trusted you and would have done anything to preserve your marriage. This is the me who knows her worth and won't accept betrayal." I hung up while he was still shouting, blocked his number, and emailed Catherine to let her know he had been informed of tomorrow's arrangements. Ryan's next move was predictable. He went to Amanda for support and a place to stay. According to the neighborhood grapevine, she welcomed him initially, but began having second thoughts when reality set in. The fantasy of their affair was one thing. Dealing with a soon-to-be divorced man with mounting legal troubles was quite another. While Ryan scrambled to find his footing, I met with my accountant to protect my business assets and consulted a therapist specializing in betrayal trauma. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the years I was trying to be the perfect wife. I began looking at downtown condos, envisioning a fresh start in a space that had never been touched by Ryan's deception. 3 weeks after the discovery, I faced Ryan across a conference table for our first mediation session. He looked terrible, unshaven with dark circles under his eyes, and a suit that hung loosely on his frame. A petty part of me was satisfied to see him suffering, but mostly I felt nothing beyond a clinical interest in reaching a favorable settlement. "Before we begin," Ryan said, his voice hoarse, "I want to say I'm sorry, Jules. I never meant to hurt you like this." "Mr. Turner," Catherine interjected before I could respond, "this session is for negotiating terms, not apologies. If you wish to express remorse, you can do so by agreeing to a fair division of assets without dragging my client through a protracted court battle." Ryan's attorney, a colleague from his firm who was clearly uncomfortable with the situation, cleared his throat. "We're prepared to be reasonable. Ryan acknowledges his indiscretion and wants to make this as painless as possible." Catherine's smile was razor-sharp. "Excellent. Then let's start with the house. My client provided the down payment from her separate inheritance and has been the primary contributor to mortgage payments for the past 3 years. We propose she retain full ownership, buying out Mr. Turner's modest equity position." As the negotiations continued, it became clear that Ryan had not anticipated my level of preparation or determination. He had assumed I would be too emotional, too desperate to preserve something of our relationship to fight effectively for what was mine. His underestimation of me became his greatest miscalculation. By the end of that first session, we had outlined terms that would form the basis of our divorce agreement, terms that heavily favored me while giving Ryan just enough to save face. As we prepared to leave, he tried once more to speak to me privately. "Jules, please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since discovering his betrayal. This man had been my partner, my best friend, my future. Now he was just someone who had chosen to throw all that away for a cheap thrill with the woman next door. "There's nothing left to say, Ryan. You made your choice 6 months ago. Now we both have to live with it." As I walked away head high and steps steady, I felt something unexpected. Not closure, which would come later, but the first fragile tendrils of freedom. In trying to destroy me, Ryan and Amanda had instead released me from a marriage that had already been hollowed out by lies. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since seeing those curtains in Amanda's photo, I felt certain I would not just survive this betrayal, I would thrive in spite of it. 6 months after discovering Ryan's affair with Amanda, I sat in my new downtown condo watching the sun set over the Denver skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. The space was entirely mine, modern minimalist, with not a single item that reminded me of my former life. No custom curtains, no family photos, no furniture selected to please someone else's taste. Everything here reflected only my choices, my preferences, my vision for this next chapter. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks earlier, the terms largely as Catherine and I had outlined in that first mediation session. I kept my business entirely, received a favorable division of our joint assets, and sold the house, neither of us wanting to remain in the space so tainted by betrayal. Ryan didn't fight as hard as he could have his position weakened by guilt and the damage to his professional reputation when the circumstances of our divorce became known at his firm. The partnership he'd been working toward was put on hold indefinitely. Several senior partners had wives who were friends with me through various charity committees, and they took a dim view of an associate who conducted an affair with a neighbor in the marital home. Corporate law firms, for all their cutthroat reputation, are surprisingly traditional when it comes to personal conduct. As for Amanda, she moved away 2 months after the scandal broke, unable to face the cold shoulders and whispered comments from neighbors who had once welcomed her. Last I heard, she had relocated to Phoenix, starting over where her history wasn't common knowledge. Ryan moved into a small apartment near his office, still trying to rebuild his professional standing and personal life. Their relationship had imploded spectacularly within weeks of being exposed. Without the thrill of secrecy, the excitement of forbidden trysts in my bed. What remained was 2 selfish people who had bonded over betrayal rather than genuine connection. According to mutual friends, the end came after a vicious argument in a restaurant where they accused each other of ruining their lives. I took no pleasure in their misery, at least not anymore. The initial vindictive satisfaction had faded as I focused on rebuilding my own life rather than monitoring the collapse of theirs. The healing process hadn't been easy or linear. There were days when grief ambushed me in unexpected moments, catching a whiff of Ryan's cologne on a stranger driving past our old house, finding an old anniversary card while unpacking. There were nights when anger kept me awake, rehearsing all the things I wished I'd said during the confrontation. There were moments of questioning whether I could ever trust again, whether the 8 years of marriage had been entirely a lie. Therapy helped enormously. My counselor, Dr. Martinez, specialized in betrayal trauma and guided me through the stages of healing. She helped me understand that what I was experiencing was normal, that the roller coaster of emotions wasn't a sign of weakness, but of processing deep pain. The trust that's hardest to rebuild, she told me during one particularly difficult session, is the trust in yourself. You're questioning your own judgment because you didn't see the affair sooner. But Ryan deliberately deceived you, and Amanda cultivated a friendship with you while betraying you. Their actions reflect on their character, not your perceptiveness. Reconnecting with friends proved another essential part of recovery. I had neglected many relationships while trying to fix my failing marriage, withdrawing from social circles as Ryan's behavior became more suspicious. Now I reached out to old friends who welcomed me back with open arms and no judgment. My sister Lauren, who had initially dismissed my concerns about Ryan, became my fiercest supporter. She stayed with me during the immediate aftermath, attended legal meetings for moral support, and helped me find and furnish my new condo. "I should have listened to you," she said one evening as we shared wine on my new balcony. "I'm so sorry I made you doubt yourself." "You couldn't have known," I assured her. "Ryan fooled everyone, not just me." My real estate business thrived despite, or perhaps because of, the personal upheaval. I threw myself into work, channeling my energy into helping clients find homes where they could build honest lives. My personal story, while not something I shared with clients, gave me new empathy for people going through major life transitions. In June, I was named Agent of the Year by my firm, setting a record for sales volume in a 6-month period. Standing on stage accepting the award, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass award plaque. Confident, poised, successful on my own terms. It was a far cry from the broken woman who had curled up on a hotel bed 6 months earlier, wondering if she would ever feel whole again. Dating remained a frontier I approached cautiously. There had been a few coffee dates, one promising dinner with a doctor friend of Lauren's, but I wasn't rushing into another relationship. Dr. Martinez assured me this was healthy, that I needed time to rediscover who I was as an individual before I could be a partner to someone else. "The right relationship will enhance your life, not complete it," she reminded me. "You're already complete." As the months passed, I developed a new perspective on what had happened. The affair, as painful as it was, had freed me from a marriage that had already been compromised. Ryan had been planning to leave me anyway, waiting only for the professional advancement that would make the transition easier for him. Had the affair remained undiscovered, I might have faced an even more calculated betrayal down the road. The Instagram post with those familiar curtains had been a twisted gift, ripping the bandage off in one excruciating tear rather than the slow, painful peeling that would have come with Ryan's eventual confession. It allowed me to act decisively, rather than be acted upon, to take control of the narrative, rather than become a footnote in someone else's story. This evening, as I watched the city lights come alive against the darkening sky, my phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "Thinking of you today. Proud of how far you've come. Dinner tomorrow." I smiled and responded affirmatively, grateful for the reminder of the support system that had helped me weather the storm. Then I moved to my desk, where paperwork for a new property listing awaited my attention. My life continued to unfold on my terms each day, a step further from betrayal and closer to whatever awaited me in this next chapter. The curtains in my new bedroom were simple white linen. Nothing custom, nothing distinctive enough to be recognized in a photo. But they let in the morning sun, beautifully illuminating a space that was entirely my own, unviolated by deception. Each morning they reminded me that I had survived the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger, wiser, and ultimately freer than before. Paradise, I had learned, wasn't waking up next to someone who would lie to your face while sleeping with your neighbor. It was waking up to a life of authenticity, surrounded by genuine relationships and the knowledge that you are enough on your own. It was recognizing toxic patterns before they destroyed you and having the courage to walk away with your dignity intact. Ryan and Amanda had sought paradise in deception and found only the hollow shell of connection built on lies. I had lost what I thought was paradise, only to discover something more valuable: the unshakable foundation of self-respect and the freedom to build a life that needed no deception to sustain it. As I closed my work files and prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the window, a woman transformed not just by pain, but by the strength discovered in surviving it. The curtains behind me framed not just a room, but a future entirely of my own design. Have you ever had that moment of sudden clarity when something small, like recognizing a pair of curtains, completely changes the course of your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember to like this video if my journey resonated with you, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that there's strength on the other side of betrayal. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most beautiful beginnings.